All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking about something that I feel is pretty important in overcoming a situation with narcissists, at least, and that's the cognitive dissonance. It plays a heavy part in a lot of the things that deals with ruminating and stuff like that, right? And basically, cognitive dissonance is really the mental discomfort you feel when your beliefs or your values clash with what you actually lived through in your reality, right? In a relationship with a narcissist, these things can really come up and come about, especially when it's done and over with. You want to believe that they loved you, but the actions that they did to you, they hurt you repeatedly, right? So you're like, dang, they would really go into an intense, ex, you know, illustration and expression of how they really loved you and cared for you, but the treatment did not match. See, this is where the confusion comes in because you're like, well, they said all of these things, but yet do they love me in their way? So you start trying to justify it and start thinking like, is it their special, specific way that they love? And some people actually try to rationalize it to the point where they can become okay with that if they define it as that's the way that they love, they kind of become okay with that and will entertain that idea. So they'll start to justify their behaviors because the charm or the promises, the future faking that the narcissist put on was so well done and elaborate, right? While ignoring the way that narcissist person actually made them feel inside, right? A lot of people have a hard time holding on to good times. Some of you really like to bring the good ahead of the bad, and you minimize the bad and you overly focus on the good. This will cause that cognitive dissonance as well, right? And this is why this is an important lesson to understand going through this, because all this can lead to like soul ties. Soul ties is a spiritual type of thing, but it's also connected through your emotions, which I have. If you want to go deeper into that, I have a full-fledged course on that. You can click and get information at the end of this lesson. I'll just post it in the description box as well. But it's an in-depth course on cutting away soul ties and anchors and blockages that happen from narcissistic manipulations and tactics. They create anchors in people's minds, their subconscious, and it feels like they cannot break away. All of the things in that course is going to show you with practical exercises of how to cut loose and break away from those soul ties. Definitely something you want to take a look at if you want to help yourself further with practical exercises. But anyway, narcissists thrive on creating confusion. And the confusion is done through manipulation and gaslighting. I've spoken to other videos about that. These cycles of idealization and devaluation continuously go on. So it's not just them lying to you, it's them gaslighting, manipulating, devaluing you, and all these other things that leaves you questioning your own reality, which intensifies the dissonance, right? So when we look at why is cognitive dissonance so hard to overcome, look at the push-pull method that narcissists do throughout the relationship or the situation that y'all were in, right? They'll move between affection and then cruelty, right? It's off and on, like being super affectionate and then very cruel at other times, right? This creates an addiction for what? What does this create an addiction for? It creates an addiction for the narcissist validation. And this keeps you stuck in a loop of trying to reconcile the good with the bad. Right? So you're like, it's bad at times, but there are some really good times, because they make sure to intensify the good times when they do try to push, pull, and use that method. It'll be from one extreme to the next. It's never just, if you pay attention to how the situation relationship was, it was never a smooth sailing. It was either one extreme or the other, because narcissists, they don't think in the middle. There's no gray thinking. It's black and white only. Right? So eventually this creates a certain type of self-blame. And many victims of narcissistic abuse blame themselves for the relationship's failure and problems and troubles. And they believe that they could have done things differently, or they could have fixed things. I always hear this from, a lot of people think, well, is it something that I didn't? No, it's not. All right. You were groomed. You were manipulated. There was a lot of emotional intensity that went into this, that eventually ended up leaving a piece of you stuck with that person. And that's the emotional attachment, right? We talk about the spiritual side, your emotions. The emotional attachment can stick with that person. Despite all the pain you may have felt while you were with them, the insults, the cheating, whatever, that bond creates a trauma bond. Trauma bonds bleed into soul ties. And it makes breaking free incredibly difficult, extremely difficult. All right? So dealing with the cognitive dissonance, and this is one of I always have said this at the beginning of the video, this is one of the things that locks people into a lot of the stuff. Again, the ruminating, the regret, all of these things is rooted in cognitive dissonance. Right? And so for me, when I had to look at the situation, the first thing I had to look at overcoming cognitive dissonance was to accept the truth about what I went through. Accept that, it was a failure. It wasn't good. It should have been better. Accept the fact you got to ask yourself the questions. Did their actions align with their words? How did you feel most of the time in that situation? Were you high stressed? Were you high strung? Were you depressed? Were you sad? How did you feel the majority of the times in that situation with the narcissist? How did you feel? What was the daily feel like? Did you feel like you had to walk on eggshells? Was it constant arguments? Was it senseless arguments? Get a clear picture of that in your mind. This is not about romanticizing the situation. It's really about looking at what it was for what you went through. So we want to pull the anchors up from what the narcissist embedded, and you want to set other anchors elsewhere. These anchors will help you in your reality to reduce the temptation of romanticizing the past. The validation that a lot of you seek and wanted from the narcissist, to acknowledge that you were the best person for them, you really helped them out, you're the only one that cared for them. Look, stop it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The narcissist thrives on controlling your emotions. You have to cut off or minimize as much as possible any type of emotion of wanting them to validate the good in you. All right? Get coaching, get therapy, something like that. Go to people who you can trust to validate you. But most importantly, the validation needs to come from within inside yourself. not the person who caused the pain. That's another big thing. All right. Another big thing to overcome is all the gaslighting. That's another thing that helps to really lock in that cognitive dissonance. Because gaslighting during a narcissistic relationship is likely to totally screw your whole mind setup and your ability to trust yourself. All right. You have to stay connected to your feelings. How were you feeling? If you didn't feel good most of the time, that's the reality. Not what you wanted to feel like or what the narcissist was telling you should feel like, but what you actually felt like. All right. Breaking the trauma bond is not easy. Yeah, there's specific strategies and stuff to take, but it's not easy. It's like detoxifying your mind. And it means no contact with the narcissist. I have a lot of clients that have broken contact and actually returned back to the narcissist, you know, from not following the instructions. No contact. The ones that, stuck to no contact and really, if you can, because there's some, and to be fair, in some of those situations, they, they had, children or whatnot. That's understandable. But in the most part of breaking the no contact, it opens up the door again. You could lead a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink, as the old saying would say. You have to be able to not put yourself in the same predicament that got you into it in the first place. Cognitive dissonance is hard. That's why ongoing stuff, if you're not committed to your recovery, it's easy to either a few things are going to happen. You're going to get into a stagnant position and you're not going to be able to move forward, or you're going to totally become reclusive and retract away from society and things in general. Are you going to become depressed, down, sad? Emotions are going to happen. But these are the things you have to go through to break through these trauma bonds. Running back to the source that caused the problem is not the answer. Just to get a hit of validation that comes with the cost. That's why seeking professional help is always a plus. When you get to a certain point of where you're recovering, you can tell. You'll have increased clarity. You'll stop questioning your reality and your decisions. You'll have better confidence in yourself. You'll start trusting yourself again, and it'll feel liberating. It'll feel good to you. You'll be able to create and have more healthy relationships once you heal. You'll be able to recognize and maintain boundaries. And a lot of times too, folks, boundaries aren't like actual walls that people put up. Like, people get that in their mind, like, oh, putting up a wall. It's nothing to do with that. Boundaries is really like a set of statutes, rules, bylaws that you have for yourself, that you implement and put in place. All right? You implement and you put these in place so that you can cross-reference them to how you're being treated by another person. And as that person, through time and consistency, is able to display to you that they are willing to respect those things, and they're not crossing them, and they're honoring it, then you can, as you see fit, either lessen them or make them stricter. But these are your own personal, it's your personal constitution. That's what boundaries are. Um, and so, and this is for those who have had that, that really stuck to, it's about sticking to the plan, the course, sticking to the strategies and stuff that you're given. You will prevail. So I've had a lot of clients prevail too, and then moved on, and they're married again, or they're in healthier relationships, or they're just living their best life and started businesses and all that stuff. But it's about having discipline. That's another key factor in overcoming any of this stuff with narcissists and recovering. Discipline. Being hopeful, being proactive about your recovery. And dealing with cognitive dissonance after a narcissistic situation, transaction is tough, but you have to remember this: you're not alone. And you're not the only one broken. And you're not the only one that is in the situation that you're in. You can recover. You can. You can get to a point where at a certain point you'll be able to laugh about the whole situation that you went through with the narcissist. You'll be able to talk and express yourself freely. Hell, some of you might be, giving, speeches or lectures on how you overcame, and doing it from a completely emotionally healed, recovered mindset and disposition. You'll be able to get there one day if you really, apply yourself and stick through and stay the course, at least, of whatever resolve it is that you choose. But you have to stay consistent. All right. And I believe most of you can do it if you really put your mind to it. One of the things key to, I want to just leave this to, the warning, the validation. This doesn't even necessarily mean if it's from the ex-narcissist, if it's from your parents or whomever. At a certain point, the most important validation has to come from you. Because if you stick around waiting for someone to acknowledge the good in you, the greatness in you or whatnot, it may never come from them. They may never show you that. But you have to know the good in you. You have to know how great you are and give yourself that own acknowledgement. That's all I have to say for this. If this resonated with you, please consider to like and share share the video. It may help someone else. And again, I have other stuff for you if you want to get into. Have a good one.